So it looks like I'm exhibiting what they call bacon collar, which is when the collar of like a cheap t-shirt kind of coils up. But you know what? I'm in quarantine. I'm comfortable at home. I don't feel like changing my shirt. What's up, guys? So while in quarantine, I've been spending some time going down memory lane, looking at old pictures and videos of when I traveled internationally, like when I went to Brazil, when I went to certain countries in Europe or in the Middle East. And I started thinking about my experiences with guys there, dates that I went on, and the fundamental differences that I found between American men and men outside of America, men internationally. Now, obviously, I'm generalizing and I can only go off of my experiences, but I have noticed that there's a few clear fundamental differences in the way that gay men behave in America and outside of America. The biggest thing I've noticed is that it seems like in America, men are less committal. Like, is that a word? Committal? I think that's a word. They're less likely to commit. They're more open to things that are casual and less sort of, I guess, traditional in a sense. Whereas internationally, I found that men that I met through Tinder, Grindr, Bumble, whatever, are more sort of specifically looking for something, and they want it to be a black and white relationship. So it's like either they want only hookups, or they know that they only want dates and they want a traditional relationship, and they have certain rules of how they see that. I've also noticed that internationally men want to move forward more quickly, whether it is with a commitment or whether it's with things like sex. Like, they just want to make things go faster. Now, I'm pretty Americanized and I live in America, but I also have international roots, and I didn't grow up my whole childhood in America. So I feel like I'm kind of a merge of these cultures, and that puts me in a strange situation sometimes with guys who are at like one end of the spectrum and I'm somewhere in between. So for example, when I was in Greece, and I made a video or two about this back when I was visiting Athens, Greece, the two guys that I went on dates with, it was very clear that they wanted a relationship, and that was exactly what they wanted, and they were open to it with me. And it was bittersweet because I was like, I'm just visiting. Like, I want to meet people, I want to have a good time, and you know, potentially make lifelong bonds or friendships, but like, I'm not going to seriously start to date somebody when I'm only here for a week and then I'm going back home. And both of them were pretty intense with the commitment they seem to be seeking from even somebody like me who was just visiting. Now, polar opposite experience, I've had guys in America say we should hang out, and then I'm like, okay, like, where do you want to go on our first date? And they'll be like, whoa, who used the word date? Like, we're just hanging out. And in my mind, I'm like, well, if there's an interest in each other and we met through a dating app, is it so wrong to call it a date? Like, what am I, chopped liver? Like, what's the big deal? I wonder how this evolution has taken place. I think in America culturally, because it's a melting pot of cultures, and you know, America is known as a country that is maybe ahead of things in terms of technology and you know, being like a superpower in the world or whatever. I guess that has created a culture that is less and less traditional as time keeps going, and therefore people are looking for atypical relationships and ways to interact with each other. Perhaps in more traditional cultures, gay men are seeking more traditional relationships to kind of normalize being gay in those societies, to make it less, I guess, taboo to be who they are. I can imagine that that's a possibility. I've also noticed that gay men outside of America tend to be way nicer. Now, that could just be my experience because I went to these other places as a tourist, right? So when you're visiting, there's a novelty factor, and people are always like, oh, this guy from here, from wherever, and he's only here temporarily. So I guess from that perspective, maybe they're more likely to want to show you a good time and show you around town and whatever. But I do find that in America, the meanness of gay men tends to be more intense. But that could also be that there are certain cultures around the world that are known for being warmer. You know, like the people are more community oriented and kinder to each other. Whereas in America, I do really feel that It's very much like a me against the world mentality, and I think that's partially because of just how the government functions as a capitalist society. So people are kind of looking out for themselves most of the time. It's also huge, one of the biggest countries in the world, just size-wise and population-wise. So it's a lot harder to build like a community sense nationally than, let's say a country that has 2 million people. If you've traveled internationally, I'm curious what you think about this.